And early in my career, very much like you, I recognized that the very rigid structure within the consulting world at that time. Now, I've not been in it in a long time. I don't know if it's loosened up a bit, but at that time, it was very rigid, where your advancement was not based on merit or value. It was based on how many years you'd put in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Infrastructure Network. My name is Chad Smeltzer. I'm your host. Today's guest is Jonathan Hasson, who's the AquaCite's VP of Smart Water Solutions. Thanks for joining me, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. Appreciate it.
Hey, I've watched you over a course of a year now on LinkedIn, back and forth,
Yeah,
with
a
some
little
things you've
over.
been posting. Yeah, stuff like that. I know you're on Dennis's podcast a couple months ago. And, I'm in this space right now. We're talking about civil engineering, and I saw your background, and you've been in the industry for a long time. And I want to take this podcast episode for the guest and kind of give them some insights back when you were, out of high school, making a decision to go to civil engineering. And I saw you went to Mississippi State. What was the driving factor for you to go to that university and be a civil engineer?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's nothing exciting. Well, at the time, it was exciting, but I am the youngest of three kids, and my older brother, was at Mississippi State in mechanical engineering, and so I had spent some time up there visiting and enjoyed Mississippi State and enjoyed going up there.
Yeah.
In all through my childhood in high school, I excelled at math. I excelled at things that would be required in an engineering environment, and speaking, writing, mathematics. It was kind of an interesting, weird combination that kind of drove me in that direction.
Okay.
And then the other part of it is I had a girlfriend at the time whose dad was a civil engineer, and I kind of liked what he was doing, and so that kind of steered me in that direction.
Okay.
And it was the right choice. I really believe the statement, when people say civil engineering is kind of like the grandfather of all engineering. And it's true, because you take a look at these civil works and the development of different technologies and things like that. A lot of it's born out of this civil works programs. And so it was a good education, a good base or foundation to start from.
Yeah. Great way of segueing in. So you were influenced of civil engineering from your girlfriend's father at the time.
Yeah.
And obviously you love math, so it was a perfect fit, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you graduated engineering, and what I'm learning is obviously you're in college for 4 years, right? And you're graduating, you're coming out, and you got to go through a process of like another 4 years of like development. Is that correct when you're coming out of college?
Yeah, so I took the cooperative education path. So I did a co-op program as well. So that really helped to give me the initial experience that I was looking for, to see if civil engineering was the right thing for me to stay in, number one. And I actually started co-oping the summer after my freshman year. So very early in my education. And I co-oped at a nuclear power facility. So it was a totally different, environment for me to be in. But at the time, it really helped me to realize that that was, I think, the beginning stage of me understanding there are a lot of things that a civil engineer can do. And even though that role was more of a structural design, structural maintenance role,
Okay.
it helped to kind of develop this foundational knowledge again. And so as I was going through school, so it ended up taking me just under 5 years because of the co-op program to get my bachelor's degree. But as I was going through and getting my bachelor's degree in engineering, I realized that, well, first off, I realized that what I thought were important courses were important, but there were some other courses that were as important that probably were not focused on very, as much as they should have been. And then as I reached my senior year, getting my bachelor's, I realized that I did not feel ready for the career that I wanted to take. So I think there's great opportunity for people in engineering after 4 years to enter into the engineering workforce. But I think it's whether it's focusing or specializing or just expanding knowledge is a good route for a lot of people, and that's what was good for me.
Okay, great. Great way of like giving us the broad picture of what you were moving forward in and where you were heading.
Sure.
Once you completed your program, co-op program, and then you went out, I would assume, into the workforce. You were already kind of in there, obviously, but
Yeah.
did you become a civil engineer doing all the civil engineer work? Like, what was the next step for your career? Like, what?
Yeah, yeah. So after I got a graduate degree. I got my master's degree
Yep.
immediately after a bachelor's, and so after I graduated with my master's degree in engineering, I went to work for a consulting firm, an engineering consulting firm in Atlanta. It was a firm called Metcalf and Eddy. A lot of people will recognize the name.
Yeah.
And it was a pure engineering design, young engineer design role that I walked into. And that was good training. It was good. Again, it's just building this foundation. Each layer you build on top of each other, and it was a good next step for me for understanding what I liked, what I didn't like, things that I would want to pursue, things I wouldn't want to pursue in that career path.
Yeah.
But I was there for about 6 years before moving to some different roles. But it was a good foundational role for me to be in.
So after that, how long were you there at the
Yeah,
engineering?
6 years, and then I transferred. It was kind of an internal transfer. They had a sister company that I went and transferred to
Yeah.
for another almost 3 years after that. Is that right? I want to make sure that yeah, that's right. So yeah, that's right. It was a while ago, and so it was that transfer was one where it took me from a design role to an operations and management role. So it was definitely a diversion from the engineering design path, and it was a good diversion. That was exactly what I needed at that time.
So you got 6 years in like designing and kind of doing the junior engineer kind of role.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like within firms, and I'm trying to understand levels of like how firms work. So this
Yeah,
is a
sure.
great education for me, and I'm sure guests who are listening. I get a lot of young listeners to a lot of my posts or podcasts, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
So then you went into operations, and I could see the trend where you're like, I just want to learn more. You're just like, I
Yeah.
learned this. Now I want to learn operations. I want to learn the whole business, right? Of everything that civil engineering, does and
Yeah.
partakes in. So operations, you did that for how long? Learning that.
That was it was it was directly operations within a water and wastewater utility environment. So I did that for 3 years, almost 3 years. And that was actually down in Puerto Rico. So I was living in San Juan, Puerto Rico for 3 years. The company I was working for was operating the water and wastewater system for the island.
Yeah.
And so I was able to get a really broad, um, tons of experience, out working in that system, and also got really good experience dealing with and communicating with regulatory organizations. So, as some people may not know, Puerto Rico, being being affiliated with the United States, depending on who you ask, they'll give you a different answer of what they are. But they are under the federal regulations for EPA and Department of Justice and things like that. So I actually had an opportunity to work directly with Department of Justice and EPA officials in that role. So it again, it's just expanding and expanding this opportunity that I was able to take.
That's great. I mean,
Yeah.
you're getting more now into the bureaucracy side
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
of
That's right.
what happened in the
That's
water
the nice
wastewater
way to
side.
say it. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you're getting a eye-opening experience of all the things that
Yeah, that's
happen,
right.
but we won't go down that road today, but,
Right, right.
that's a whole other podcast. So, okay, wow, your background, and I can see where you're moving forward because I already know some of the positions you've taken. So then you've moved into what the next role was a business development role? Like, what was
No,
that?
I after that role, I moved into a role with a company called ADS Environmental Services,
Okay,
and it was a operations management role. So very project based. I was managing kind of an area for the company when I first started with them, and multiple projects, multiple engineers in the organization, multiple field crews, things like
mhm,
that were part of the operations group. So I went from municipal operations,
okay,
utility operations, into more of a business operations role, and so responsible for P&L statements, responsible for proposal writing, responsible for
wow,
managing some level of business development. We had dedicated business development people as well.
okay,
So I started in a smaller role in Atlanta, and then over the next 20 years, I was with them for 20 years. I went through multiple different roles around the country. So I moved around the country with them, taking on some larger organizational roles within
yeah,
within the company.
taking on more responsibility, it sounds
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
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 that's pretty cool. So, wow, so you're now going, from the consulting firm world, operations, learning the bureaucracy that I kind of pointed out, to more of the private side,
yeah. That's right.
like business operations, and staying in that water wastewater space.
Mhm.
And then you moved on to. It looks like you were moving on to. I'm going to work a whole way through
No,
this.
this is fine. It's just reminding me of how I continued moving on. So it's an interesting
Honestly,
discussion.
it's a great. Like, I feel like young generation need to hear this stuff because
They do. They do.
yeah, it's important. It's super important. So, and we'll go back to some of this later, but
Sure.
so after ADS, you moved on to more of where you're at now, or
Yeah.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So after ADS, I had different roles within ADS. In my last few years there, we're in a product management role. So
Yeah.
ended up my last position there was director of product management, and then I had to deal with hardware, software, product. Not development, but working with the development teams to make sure that we're delivering products to our end customer that they need and desire. So after that role, then I'm in my current role now at AquaCite. It's a role that's very specific to intelligent software solutions. So even though I'm a civil engineer, I'm vice president in a software company now. So it really is a very, I think it's fairly unique path that I've taken,
Oh yeah.
but it's been one that I think has been, I've been blessed to have it and had the opportunity provided to me to do all the different things I've done.
Yeah. No doubt. There's a reason why you've learned all these different parts of water, wastewater, the industry, the political, the
Yeah, they all
engineering.
support they all
Yeah,
support
it
everything
all
else. Yeah.
very
Mhm.
much ties all together. The software
Mhm.
side, I see where you've already kind of, I can tell you've already seen where the industry's heading.
Yeah,
It's moving into tech back. It's all going
it
tech.
is.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's the
it
future,
is.
right? So you're getting that experience now in the software side. So what, out of all these things that you are a part of, what were some of the challenges you had to overcome?
Uh, some of the first this is on the tech side. This is one of the first things that popped into mind. A lot of people nowadays won't remember this, but there were times where you had to schedule your computer time within the organization because you shared computers. So you had to schedule
Ah,
your time, and you actually had to track your time so you could bill your end customer for the computer time. So I mean, it has changed dramatically. That's really aging me
wow.
right there. That was back in the early '90s. But some of the bigger challenges that I've had to my personal challenges I've had to overcome is recognizing that you can take a leap to do something different and challenge yourself I mean, you always have an alternate path.
Right.
It's not like you're signing your life away to take a different path to something.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work out, it's okay. And it took me a long time to realize that. And I'm truly a believer that things work out for the best of those who that really seek to do the right thing. And because of that, it's I've really backed off a little bit in the terms of the career anxiety. I'm just it's all good. And so I had to overcome that personally. There are things professionally that you have to overcome, that I've had to overcome, and it's continuing to this day. And you and I were talking about it earlier. Is this uh, resistance to, I'm not even going to say resistance to change, because that's not right. It's resistance to this evolution of our industry and within the industry itself.
Mm.
And there are legacy systems, there are legacy processes, legacy companies that are very, I have to be very careful how I say it, that are really delaying what I see needs to happen, which is the technological change. I think technology is going to take over some of this industry. There's no doubt about it. And we have to be able to use that and leverage that for the benefit of our customers and our industry, rather than fighting against it. Figure out how to use it and keep moving forward. That's a
You,
big challenge right now.
yeah, you pointed out a lot of different things there, but one thing was, it
That's
sounded
all
like,
here. It's
yeah,
all I'm
no,
hanging
no,
up
no,
with
no,
all the time.
we're gonna get to say where that. So, purpose, follow your purpose is what I got out of that. You followed your purpose. You followed the guidance of God or whatever, just to get,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
where you got to go to.
And you may not know the purpose at the time.
You might
That's the
not.
thing. And that's the fear factor you have to overcome. And
Yep.
it's okay. It's okay. It's okay to be anxious. It's okay to be fearful about change, but realize that there's a path forward for sure.
It's all about that faith, man.
Yeah,
Literally
yeah,
all about that
yeah,
faith. And
yeah.
you might put yourself into a space where it is challenged. I remember having a bad boss. We all
Yeah,
have them.
you had some
I think
too.
we all have them. And you're like, wait, I'm 26. I'm an operations manager, and you're restricting me from doing the things I'm supposed to be doing. And I never understood that. But I was like, first thing that I realized was like, I can't stay in this role.
Yeah,
Like, I gotta
yeah,
go. I was like, I'm going
yeah.
to go into sales. I'm out of this operation side. So that was one of my kind of experiences.
Yeah, and I never really saw myself as an entrepreneurial spirit,
Yeah.
but I do see myself as someone who's always looking for what is that next thing that's going to support what this plan is, or what
Yeah.
um, what I'm doing. And early in my career, very much like you, I recognized that the very um, rigid structure within the consulting world at that time. Now, I've not been in it a long time. I don't know if it's loosened up a bit, but at that time, it was very rigid, where your advancement was not based on merit or value. It was based on how many years you'd put in. And I felt just stymied by that. And it just held me back. And that's one reason I took the leap to jump into operations.
Were you just trying to bait me on that one? Because I'm
No,
all in
no, I
on that
knew you were,
right
well, I figured you were going there. Yeah.
now.
I've
So
read your stuff online. It's okay.
trying to get me all blood pressure high up right now.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
obviously, I think we're all starting to see how we all know where the industry needs to go, and it needs to move forward. It needs to stop being this place where it's gate kept, where it's closed, it's off. You can't bring in innovation, because if you do that, it changes our business models and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
See that a
There's
lot.
a tremendous amount of fear out there right now. I mean, you got AI coming into play right now with
Hmm.
these companies that is like, and it is going to be potentially a disruptive place in the next 5 years. I really do
It
feel
is.
like that's coming, and not in a bad way. It's a very good way. But those, like you kind of mentioned, that are not grabbing that innovation, not moving forward, not with that growth mindset to not change their models, they're going to be really in a bad position later. I really do feel
Yeah.
that way. So
Yeah, and I think a lot of the fear comes from people. A lot of people see this as, and I heard this with in a tech podcast I was listening to somewhere. I can't remember where it was, but the guy said we have to describe what's happening in whatever industry based on technology advancement. It's not really a revolution. Revolutions tend to have negative connotation. It's not a revolution. It's an evolution of what's going on. And we're just evolving in the industry. We need to evolve in the industry to understand that there are different paths. There's different ways of achieving the same result, and you can do it in a way that's very rigid and very conservative, or you can do it in a way that utilizes technology to reduce friction in the process, utilize systems that allow for a bit more creative context to go into it, and still get to the same result that's supporting the end user, the end customer.
yeah,
And that's something that I think is really important for us as we're kind of evangelizing
yeah,
this whole technology change, is that it's just an evolution, and we have to be able to move down that pathway in a way that makes sense,
if you
and keeps it moving forward.
if you really start to think about it, and I think about this all the time, why companies, let's use a firm, has been in the same geographical area for the X amount of years, hasn't really branched out or grown. We see this all the time. Small and medium firms, they stay in the same spot, they never grow. How now, if they open up their minds and start to think bigger, you can expand your company now. Like you
Mhm.
have the technology sitting right there to do it. But the fear and the lack of knowledge or education on the, let's say, the upper part of the business, the decision makers, they're just not in that growth mindset. I don't feel like it anyway. They're just kind of pretty
Yeah,
up there.
I think they're probably in a growth mindset, but it may be a different growth mindset because
Yeah.
they when you are successful, this is one of the things that I've had to overcome. I'm glad you brought this up. When you are successful at something,
Yeah.
you get complacent in that, and you tend to rely on that same whatever it is, process, whatever, to continue to grow that success. So your success may be growing, but it's probably growing at a lower rate than it could be if you were able to look at something different, do something different.
Yeah. 100%. I think that we're in this weird phase, retiring guys that are 30 years in the industry, 40 years of running firms, because, they're just like, look, I'm just going to give it to the principal and whatever, the company's going to continue. But I don't see that, there's not going to be a fast enough change there from
Yeah,
people coming in, because you can see it's kind of still the same mindset. And then the younger guys, like you said, in their tenureship, are just still waiting behind, sitting there anxiously, ready to just disrupt, right? And be creative now, potentially AI. And I don't see them wanting to stay in that environment where they're stifled and stuck
right.
and waiting for another 15 years to move up in leadership. It's not going
That's
to
right.
work. It's just
That's right.
unsustainable, right? So,
It is unsustainable, and you see it in the numbers. So there's one utility that I'm working with now that has had greater than 40% vacancy rates
wow.
in their engineering teams, engineering and operations teams, and that's massive of a hill to overcome, or of a gap to fill. But they're gradually filling it, but they're losing people, and this is not just them. And a lot of different
Wow.
utilities or engineering firms are losing people, exactly what you said, because the younger, maybe not necessarily as experienced, but younger, more forward-looking folks or engineers are looking for that next challenge. They want to jump to that next challenge.
Which brings us back to your career. That's a perfect
Mhm.
example of it. I
Yeah,
mean, honestly, you were that person that had to make changes, loved civil engineering, but knew that
yeah,
wasn't going to be the career for you because
yeah.
you
That's right.
wanted to learn more. You wanted to get
That's
out.
right.
But
Yeah,
maybe if things were different back then, in the firms, there might have been more opportunities for you to stay in it. I mean, just
yeah.
thinking outside the box. But yeah,
Yeah, it could have been. It could have been. Yeah, it's there's other challenges, I think, within traditional engineering that would have had to change for me as well.
I got
I think I remember. I think I saw one of your one of your blog posts recently where you said that the engineering, especially the design engineering field, has kind of become this factory process.
yeah,
You just kind of build and move and build and move.
yeah.
And that's good for learning. So that's okay for young engineers to learn the processes, learn how things fit together. But eventually, just like a manufacturing process, a manufacturing floor, in a factory, people tend to move on when they get burned out on it.
Could you imagine? I'll use my kids, and you probably have experience. You have kids, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. 2 girls.
They pick up so fast the technology now
Oh
versus
yeah.
what they used to. I'm like,
Yeah.
how did you just do that? They just like,
Yeah.
no, they're just like, boop, 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 boop. Could you imagine
Yeah.
putting them into a CAD or a Civil 3D or whatever and being
Mhm.
like, hey, use this? They're going to pick it up pretty quickly, I would imagine,
Yeah.
right? And
It's amazing. Yeah. It really is amazing. And I look at, so I have 2 girls. Older daughter's a nurse,
yeah,
so she is. I mean, she's serving our serving the world in a way that I just can't imagine doing. Number one. My younger daughter is she's a senior in computer science, and even though that industry is taking a hit right now,
right.
but she picks things up so quickly. And this gets way back to what we were talking about at the very beginning. She is not necessarily focused on the technology side of it. She's got to learn that,
Right.
but she is very focused and very interested in the human side of
Mm.
technology and the human interaction with technology. And that, I think, is going to really serve her quite well. And it's because so many people or so many kids are picking up the technology side, but they miss the human side, and
Mhm.
they miss the sociological and the psychological side of computing. And I think that's going to serve her very well. But we have to let them choose their path and go down their own path. But
100%.
it's been very encouraging because I see this, especially with, what generation is that? Is that Gen
Z?
Alpha, Z? I can't remember.
Maybe
She's
I,
2021. Yeah, I don't know what that is right now.
yeah.
But I see that in that specific uh, age group, that they are very focused on not just the technology or not just the business side, but they're also very interested in the human side. So
Mm.
it's a really interesting thing to see.
I think that is a great place to be because I
Yeah.
do feel like as AI grows and becomes more the norm, you'll see human interaction and reskilling of people to be more social, to be more engaging because they have to reskill themselves because they've been
Yeah.
associating themselves to devices for so long. You think about that. They got to detach themselves. It does become an addiction. So it's going to be
Yeah.
she's on the right path for sure. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
good.
And the true developer is going to be replaced.
Yeah, that's pretty much but if you're a developer right now and you can prompt really well, you're good. So prompt engineering is going to be a
That's
huge
right. That's
future.
exactly right. That's
Yeah.
true. That's right.
So I see, we already kind of you start to see it now where AI is a new way of I think there's like 95 million jobs that are going to be created through AI just because you'll have to learn how to use AI.
Mm.
So and do things right. You can't, us just normally right now in GPT do and ask it a question. That's simple, right? But there's so much more you can do with it
Yep.
that a lot of people need to learn.
Yep.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, Jonathan, it's been a pleasure. We could probably go on and talk about a bunch more things, but
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun. Yeah, there's a lot we could talk about for
oh
sure.
yeah, no doubt. What I think we'll do maybe later is I'll get you and someone else. We'll have a bigger conversation down the road here, and maybe we'll have a certain topic we'll talk about to address and see where it all goes. But Jonathan, how can people get a hold of you? What would be the best way?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. You can look at my name. Jonathan K. Hasson is my LinkedIn profile. I'm on all the other socials too. You can find me someplace. With JK Hasson on Twitter or X now. But it's love for have people reach out to me. I love talking with younger technology focused folks because there's so much ahead of them. There's so many opportunities out there
Hmm.
that, especially from folks that are more engineering, um, have that more engineering bent, where they're looking at not just the technology, but they're looking at the whys and the understanding, the concepts and all that. Love that, but also love to talk to folks about college football and baseball if you want to. So it's fine.
That's good to know too.
That's
Very
right.
important. Talking about that social human component.
Hey,
You gotta have
hey,
hobbies, something, right? Other
that's
than
right. That's right. You got to have something to look forward to. And right now, fall football is the next thing. So it's all right.
that's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Jonathan, and truly appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thanks, Chad. Really appreciate it.